Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jacob, and I'm speaking from Gold Coast in Australia. I am joining you this afternoon. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it to be there with you. Recently, I accepted a job offer which demanded me to start working early this month. So I'm really very sorry that I can't be with you physically, but I'm joining you now, and I would wish to give you a presentation of my thesis. As you can see, my thesis title was the role of culture in emotional, sexual, and physical abuse of children, and the case of child abuse in Tanzanian society. I had hoped that I would present this to you on a PowerPoint form, but I have had a technical hiccup around here, and today in Australia it is Queen's birthday, so I couldn't get any technical support, so I hope you can follow my presentation without too much difficulty. I will start by introducing my work. The study that I did was partly inspired by a finding from another study. Between 2008 and 2011, government of Tanzania, in collaboration with UNICEF and other organizations, formed a multi-sectoral task force which conducted a study about violence against children in Tanzania. This was a unique study, first of its kind, that was conducted in the country and probably all over Africa. And it was very comprehensive. It looked at all forms of sexual, emotional, and physical abuse of children. Now, the findings from this study were appalling, and they really inspired me to want to learn more, investigate deeper, and find out more about issues of violence of children in my country. So that is the background of my study. So as I said, the objective for my study was to further investigate on child abuse situation in Tanzania. And I had hoped that by conducting this study, I will bring a clear understanding of child protection issues and child protection break between the past and present, and so I can be in a position probably to recommend strategies for newer mechanisms that can enhance child protection in Tanzania and probably in other countries in Africa as well. I asked myself a number of questions. The key ones were these: how have children been protected in society, the same society of Tanzania, which today is informing us that this appalling amount of violence against children? What happened in the past? How were children protected? What mechanisms were present that helped to protect children from being abused sexually, emotionally, and physically? How did these mechanisms function, these cultural mechanisms? And what has happened during the transformation throughout the period from the traditional society to the modern society? A lot of things happened in between. Colonialism came, modern cash economy came, migration, and all those factors have had significant impact on the way of living of the society in Tanzania. Now, throughout this transition, my interest was to find out what has happened to child protection and the mechanisms that protected children during that time. So how did I do this? I had to select a few cases that I could use to investigate my case. And the ones that I picked was extended family living arrangements, age-set group system, and polygamy. These were very significant and cultural practices that could be found among many tribes in Tanzanian society, in the traditional Tanzanian society. And at this point I should mention that my study is treating Tanzania as a one society. I acknowledge that Tanzania is comprised of a number of ethnic groups. In fact, we have more than 120 ethnic groups. but most of these ethnic groups are have very similar practices, and they are all unified by one language, whereas there are a number of dialects, but every ethnic group is speaking Swahili. And so from that point, I was confident that any findings that I get from my cases would relate to most of the ethnic groups. So that could be a limitation, and I'll talk about limitation at the end. But at this point, I should mention that I'm treating Tanzania as a one society. So amongst most of the ethnic groups, you would find that there are extended family practices, there was polygamy practices, and there was age-set grouping system being practiced in those ethnic groups. Now, so I went on investigating how these practices helped in protecting children. Now, it could be that it was by design, that the society in the traditional times thought if we live in this way, children will be protected, or it could just be an accident, a consequence of a situation. So, but that is not my concern. My concern has been that these practices protected children. They acted as mechanisms that protected children. So that is the most important thing. It's not about whether they were designed to protect children or they accidentally happened to be protecting children. The important thing for me is that they acted as mechanisms that protected children. And after investigating in detail how these practices functioned and how children were protected through the function of these practices, I came out with a number of findings. One is, whereas most of traditional practices have not survived societal transformation, so through this period, a lot of these practices have been abandoned, there's been disintegration, but still, in modern society, we would find some of these practices present. For example, still in Tanzania, you would find